Thank you for having me. Let me let everyone know a little bit about me and my background and why I'm passionate about helping people with speaking. Um, I'm a speaker, an actor, and a coach. And for a long time in my life, as a speaker and an actor and a person back then working as an executive assistant in offices, I was having wildly varying hit or miss experiences anytime I had to speak when it really counted on stage as a speaker, as an actor, and those important moments that come up in life. And sometimes I felt like a porcelain doll, sort of unable to speak or move. And sometimes I felt like some sort of deranged mannequin had taken over my body and it was moving and speaking in these situations. But I felt like the real me was trapped on the inside and it wasn't really coming out of my mouth the way that I wanted it to. So I went on a quest of sorts to figure out, why am I sometimes having amazing experiences and sometimes I'm feeling like the porcelain doll or the deranged mannequin? And I found a lot of great answers and pulled them together. And now I help leaders and change makers speak with confidence and impact when it counts. And what I'm going to cover today helps people with all of those kinds of moments: public speaking moments, dynamic boardroom conversations, and really important one-on-one or smaller group conversations. Maya Angelou said, "People will forget what you did, they will forget what you said, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And part of what that means is it's not just what you say, it's also how you say it. Because who we are as we speak is often what helps us create our impact, helps us make people feel in a way that will help them to remember us, to be inspired, and to follow us as leaders. If you think about one of the most famous public speeches in history, Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech, it's an amazing speech. And part of that came from a speechwriter. But then if you imagine someone like Richard Nixon delivering those words instead of Martin Luther King Jr., you start to feel the impact of, it's not just what you say, it's also how you say it that helps you have your impact. So I would love for people to take a moment and close their eyes and imagine yourself in 3 different moments that matter. Imagine that you've been asked to deliver an international TED Talk. And as you're walking out on stage, notice what's happening. What are you experiencing mentally, physically, energetically, and emotionally? And now let that one go. And now imagine that you're in one of those dynamic 10 to 12 person meetings around a boardroom table in the workplace. And as the conversation is moving around and everyone's throwing in their opinion, notice what happens for you as you imagine that mentally, physically, energetically, and emotionally. And now let that one go. And imagine one more situation. Imagine that you've been called into the office of someone in your workplace who is senior to you in some way, either the person that you directly report to, or maybe someone who's senior to you on another team. And as you're sitting down across from them in their office, notice what happens for you. What are you experiencing physically, mentally, energetically, and emotionally? And now go ahead and take a breath and let that all go. And you can open your eyes and come back to this moment. In moments that matter, all 3 of those are moments that matter. Many people feel things like their heart pounding, sweaty palms, maybe even sweaty armpits, increased energy, and sometimes a shallow breath or a lack of any breath. Discover that they're actually not breathing at some point in those situations. Another set of people might say that they feel fine, that they experienced no sensation. And while fine can feel better for some people, it often means that we're actually numb. If we're not feeling anything, it's impossible to access charisma from there. The trick is to take all of that adrenaline, which is pumping the sweaty palms and sweaty armpits, the extra blood being pumped by the heart, and then to breathe deeper and to use it like an athlete swimming an Olympic race. They feel all of those same sensations. Their heart starts beating faster before the race. And it's because their body's going to need that energy in the moment that matters. So what to help people thrive in these important conversations and show up with confidence and increase their impact when it counts is 3 things to remember. First, root in a sense of purpose. Second, breathe life into the experience. And third, energize yourself and the space. And let's go ahead and break those down a bit one by one. First, root in a sense of purpose sounds really amazing. And why doesn't it happen? If you're passionate enough to give a TED Talk, if you're walking into a meeting that is important to you, why aren't we automatically rooting in a sense of purpose, connecting to our why, if you will? The thing that gets in the way of us showing up as our most confident selves and has us feeling underconfident or hesitating during public speaking and other important moments is the inner critic. And when it comes to our voices and our executive presence or leadership presence, I call this inner critic the soul suckers, because they suck the soul right out of our voices and have us either not speaking at all, like the porcelain doll, or showing up like the deranged mannequin, where we're moving and we're talking, but it doesn't feel like us. It feels soulless. And how the soul suckers are doing that is they're interpreting all of that sensation as bad or wrong and telling us that we're somehow not enough for feeling some of that sensation. For a lot of my clients, they come in really believing that they're one of the only people on the planet who experiences an increased heart rate when they walk out to speak in front of a large group of people, or they walk into a meeting with their boss. And then they'll look around the room and discover, hey, almost everyone here is actually describing feeling some of those sensations. So we identify these soul-sucking inner critic thoughts that tell us that we're not enough, that sometimes they'll do it by telling us that we're an imposter, we're not enough for some specific reason. They might say things like, who are you to dream of giving a TED Talk? There's not enough time for you to put your opinion into this conversation in the workplace. So first, notice what your soul suckers are saying to you. How are they telling you that you're not enough or the situation is not enough? And then take their hands off of the wheel of you. Don't let them drive how you show up. And then once you've gotten them out of the way, you can start to really root in a sense of purpose. And 2 tools for rooting in a sense of purpose are picking one of your values to focus on. So let's say that integrity is really important to you, or creativity might be a value that's important to you, or courage might be a value that is important to you. Whenever you're honoring those things, and they may be different for each of you, life feels good. Things may feel challenging, but they don't feel hard or full of struggle or pointless. They'll feel energized and thrilling rather than soul sucking. So imagine yourself walking out to give a TED Talk and honoring courage as you do it. It feels very different to think of honoring courage rather than allowing the soul suckers to drive, who might think something like, don't screw it up. You're not enough. Somehow hide so they can't figure out that you're not enough. Focusing on honoring integrity or creativity or courage or any one of your values shifts it to looking to create something in the experience rather than avoid it going bad. After you've done that, or in place of that, if this other tool speaks to you, you can also imagine calling in an ally, someone real or imagined, living or passed on. And as you walk into the high stakes situation, you imagine that you've called in that person, and that person is standing behind you with a hand on your back, on the backside of your heart in a way, and kind of with you saying, I've got your back. And that person also often helps you connect to what you want to create, what your why is, what's your sense of purpose in this situation. What's the thing that's more important to you than that soul-sucking fear? Once you've started to root in a sense of purpose, you may already notice that your body is willing to breathe in a different way. Breathe life into the experience is the second tip for showing up as your most confident self to have the most impact in the situations that matter. And there's two ways of breathing life into the experience of speaking that most of us in the Western world have been trained not to do. First, it's breathing deep in those high stakes situations. We've been taught both consciously and unconsciously to suppress our emotions, which we do by suppressing our breath. And then we try to power our voice across the room using some of the very same muscles that are busy trying to hold back our emotions and our breath. Once you've gotten connected to that sense of purpose, you can nourish your body with more breath, inhaling, and then actually use that breath to speak, to carry your voice across the space. And that way of speaking lands on others in a different way. So I'm going to demonstrate. I'm going to say the word passion, Passion, 3 different ways. First, I'm going to keep talking and exhale all air so that I don't have any nourishing breath. Passion. Now I'm going to inhale and then spit out the breath as if my body is not comfortable with the emotion. Passion. Now I will nourish. Passion. You can probably feel it hits you a different way when my body is nourished with breath. The other way to breathe life into the experience is to master the silences. First, we have to become comfortable in the silence. Instead of letting our soul suckers tell us that we're boring and we need to outrun other people's boredom and just keep talking and talking and talking, we have to know that we're creating an impact over there in the people listening to us, in the audience or the people in the boardroom. And in those silences, they have a chance to digest the experience. If we just keep going and going and going, they're unable to keep up with us. They're unable to process it mentally, emotionally, and they're unable to even have the time to take notes on what we're saying if they want to do that. If you think of music and art, this is similar there. In music, it's the space that makes meaning out of the notes. Otherwise, it might be like me when I was 4 years old. I never learned to play piano. I might have just been hitting the keys, making noise. That's different than music. And with visual art, it's the space that actually reveals the image. The same is true of our speaking. The last thing I want to share is energizing yourself and the space. And there is a tool set that I use with people called anchoring and including that allows us to really energize the space. Great speakers do this intuitively. The speakers that have us feeling like they must have been talking to us the entire time. The speaker, Martin Luther King Jr., that last far beyond their lifetime. They know how to connect with eye contact with one person while allowing everyone else in 100-room theater, 100-person theater, or a football stadium to be a part of the experience. This is part of what gives us that charisma that actually moves people and captivates their attention rather than merely having them able to hear us. And when I use the word energy, some people understand it and get it right away, and some people don't. And this is part of why charisma is that thing that a lot of people feel like they can't quite put their finger on. Why do some people have it and other people don't? In reality, we're all born with charisma, and society has taught us to cover it up. In order to recapture it, rooting in a sense of purpose helps, breathing, nourishing our bodies with breath helps, and then anchoring and including to energize the space helps. And in order to include everyone with our energy, it's a matter of consciously intending to include all of those people, rather than letting our soul suckers try to survive the experience of all of the energy that we're having and the blood pumping and the people looking at us by subconsciously excluding them. On the flip side, it's also a matter of giving ourselves permission to be seen and heard and felt, which our soul suckers don't want us to do. They protect us from any vulnerable situations. And some of us may have been told, don't be too big, don't be too loud, don't be too much, don't take up too much space. Remember that we're giving ourselves permission to be seen and heard and felt for the sake of that sense of purpose, that mission, that why, that hero's journey, the value that we don't, than our fear.